The following is a Hoop Ball presentation.
Hoop Ballers! Welcome back to another episode and another edition of Today in Sports Betting. I'm your host, Devin Ellington. We're at DALE007 on Twitter. And this is a hoop-ball.com presentation. As always, go check out the new premium content over there on the site. Check out the free content. It's abundant. And then join the family any which way, with the fantasy basketball advice, with the wager pass or the DFS pass, Hoopball 360. We got some really awesome content that you should be taking advantage of either way. And this podcast is one of those. So welcome. And today's show is going to be awesome. I've got a really awesome guest here today that I'm excited to have on and to pick the brain of. I've beaten it down a couple times, but we know that I love my Big 12, and I kind of live in the heart of America. So love the Midwest stuff, and I love the Big 12. So today's show is going to be geared again towards that. Before I unravel all that, need to talk about manscaped.com. Go over there, use the promo code HoopBall20. That's HOOPBALL20. Get free shipping and then 20% off of all those new products that they're churning out. Got the Weed Whacker, Lawnmower 3.0, both with great battery life, lithium battery on the Weed Whacker to get the nostril hairs and the ear hairs and all the stuff that you don't want to tug. Use promo code HoopBall20 over on manscaped.com. You're going to get that free shipping, like I said, 20% off on some great products. Get your lawn mowed. All right. Well, I kind of don't want to keep doing all the drawn out stuff anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and get the guest in today. It's someone's work that I appreciate, the affiliate he's with, the platform that he's under, or, with it just, I honestly don't think there's anything like it if you need Big 12 content. So that's where they stuck out for me, was with the podcast and then the work that, oh gosh, sorry, I'm spilling all the beans. All right, never mind. All right, so today we got Derek Duke at Derek Duke 25 on Twitter. He's located out in Castroville, Texas. Like I said, HeartlandCollegeSports.com covers the Big 12 for at Heartland_CS. Derek, thanks again, man, and sorry for the long-winded intro. I'm just excited.
Oh, no worries, man. I appreciate you having me on the show, and I always appreciate anybody that enjoys what we do as far as Heartland College Sports and covering the Big 12, and that's what we're here for, to provide everybody great Big 12 content, and the people we get to meet and talk to that appreciate our work. It's always unbelievable. We always get great feedback from everybody who reads or listens or whatever. So we do greatly appreciate all of our readers and listeners.
Yeah, and just to be a little more selfish here and talk about myself, I became really familiar with you guys with my time in Kansas City. I've lived all up and down the Midwest, and I was looking for some really great off-season college football curators, and you guys were the ones that popped up for me a couple of years ago, and that's how I got real popularized and familiarized with you. So yeah, thank you for that. Like you said, top-notch Big 12 content. It's hard to really nail down a niche and then do it at an elite level. So I commend you guys for that 100%.
Oh, for sure. Thank you. We really do appreciate that. We do it for out of the love of the Big 12. This thing didn't start off nearly what it is today. But years ago, Pete had a vision of this thing, just trying to steadily grow it, but finding that small niche community really who really loves the Big 12. And it's kind of like, no matter what team you root for or whatever, you kind of are always looking around the conference, and there really wasn't that coverage of the Big 12 that he necessarily felt that was great out there. And so he started his own website, and it really took off. And really made it what it is today. But like I said, it's always the without readers or listeners, websites and podcasts aren't a whole lot. I mean, obviously, it's always great to have podcasts and content, but when you have people really supporting it and backing it, that's always a great feeling.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you and Pete, alike understand the grinds and the aspects of it that it takes to not only just do content, but do it at a high level and make sure that you're putting your best stuff out there. And, so I had a couple of questions for you. We've talked a lot about the Heartland thing, but, before that, obviously there wasn't always Heartland for you, or maybe there was. I don't know. That's why I'm asking these questions. So, when did you first take root in the belief that you were going to cover the Big 12, solely as a conference or, out of your true passion?
Well, I started back in the 2016 season for Pete. At that time, I think Pete said the website was maybe a year or two old at that time, but it was very small. He had a ton of help back then with writers, but I don't think he necessarily found his group that he was maybe looking for and ready to continuously move on with. In 2016, I kind of just really dabbled in it. I was kind of maybe writing a preview week here and there. We kind of did a game of the week, and then from there, it really just snowballed. 2017 got a little bit more involved with the website, and then 2018, 2019. Now we're in 2020 and 2021 now. So it's kind of really just had a snowball effect as far as content goes. But I really started back in 2016, and I'm not really sure who was reading back then. I could probably count on my fingers how many people were reading my previews back then. But that was really my first season with Heartland. But Pete, I think, started it either back in 2014 or 2015. And that was really kind of, like I mentioned earlier, he didn't feel like there was great coverage of the conference, and he wanted to provide that because of his passion for the Big 12. And I feel like I had the same passion as him, and I really enjoy what I do. And if you enjoy something that you do, you're never really working, if that kind of makes sense. So I really do like writing for Heartland. Sometimes I hop on the podcast and whatnot, but Pete's got that thing running like a hot stove. So credit all to him, but I do what I can to help out.
Yeah, I'm going to steal a phrase from a couple of our Australian Aussie contributors, and they say that it's going off like a frog in a sock. So that's what you guys are doing. Maybe I mean probably two socks, to be honest. So just to piggyback your answer and your retort on that first question into my second question and use it as a segue. You spoke on your experience so far and the timeline of your experience with Heartland Sports. So, it's like you were reading my mind, but what has your experience with Heartland Sports been like so far? I mean, it sounds like you've enjoyed it thoroughly. And then also, what is it you enjoy most about curating content for a Big 12 specific platform?
I think the question or answer for me is a little bit connected due to, obviously, mentioned Pete Mundo, who owns and operates Heartland College Sports. He's been great for me. He's the guy that gave me my first shot at actually writing for a website. Like I said, back then, it probably really wasn't much. Like I said, I could probably count on my fingers how many people were probably reading our work daily. But he's the one that gave me my first shot, and he's kind of helped mold my writing style. Everybody on our staff has a different kind of style. He always talks about my style being more of a sit down in a bar and have a beer kind of style. Kind of just shooting the talking sports, and that's how I always enjoyed myself. Is definitely kind of a sports bar kind of conversation. I really do enjoy that, but he's helped me kind of mold myself in a different I guess you would say shapes and forms of writing, from, storylines, different angles that you can take, all those types of things. But I think the main thing why I enjoy really what I do, number one, obviously, is the love I have for the conference of the Big 12. I mean, for me, it's all about football. For some people, it may be basketball, baseball, whatever it may be. But I really do appreciate watching all these different football games that we have every week. And, obviously great teams help that conference, obviously, and help your love for the sport. But, good or bad, I always love to watch football no matter what. I think that's the main thing for me. But I think it starts and ends kind of with Pete, my relationship with Pete. I don't know how many people, when you have a boss, you're really able to speak to. Obviously, if you're in a huge company, how often are you really going to speak to the owner? It's more that small niche community. We have a very small staff, and we have a great staff at that. So for me, I get to have daily interactions with Pete. I get to have my input, my say, and he values that. And it's not often in a company that you have the owner of the company value really what employees say a whole lot of times. So, and the best thing about it is, he lets us kind of do really whatever we want. I mean, if I want to write about this, I get to write about this. If I want to write about that, I get to write about that. So I think really just the creative, there is really no limit to the creativeness with a website. And I think that's what I enjoy so much. I mean, sure, obviously there are baseline topics you got to cover, but there's some times where, if I have an idea and I want to write about it, he's all for it. So I think to me, that's the best part about what I do is the freedom of writing that I get to do.
That does sound joyous. And honestly, and again, this is Derek Duke with Heartland College Sports. But, we keep referencing Pete and Pete Mundo. And, a lot of people, because you and I, we're pretty Big 12 junkies. I've got, there's some listeners I know of and interact with that are in Canada. And, there's some that are not in the Big 12 country or the heartland. So we need to, I think, talk a little more about Pete. And we've talked about him being the founder of Heartland Sports and such. But one thing that I really appreciated about Mr. Mundo was the fact that he's not just thriving and pumping his heart and belief in the heartland, but he's also on AM radio, like bright and early. I think it's like 6 or 7 in the morning, like every weekday, if I remember right. And I'm an AM radio junkie as well. So that, I came across Pete there, heard about Heartland, through his broadcasts. So again, it's another small love of mine, and that's AM radio, something I would eventually love to dabble in, or, maybe have a small AM radio station myself. So I appreciated his work there, and then also as a Big 12 aficionado. So great work from both of you guys, that's for sure.
Oh, we do greatly appreciate it. And you mentioned Pete, and I don't know, if he's really said this story much, but he's a guy that's really grinded probably a lot more than I have, or a lot of other guys in our staff have. I mean, I remember his days, he told me he started out in Woodward, Oklahoma. I can't remember the radio affiliate. I do apologize. But, he started in, small town Oklahoma radio. And then when I first met him, I believe he was with, Sports Illustrated and CBS Sports doing radio up in New York City.
Yeah.
And now he's got his gig in Kansas City. So all seems to be doing well for him. And I'm just really happy for him. Maybe wish he could have went to Dallas or something like that, but Kansas City, great spot. Obviously the Big 12 basketball tournament conference championship is always there every year. So he's really centralized, and I think it's a really great fit for him there in Kansas City.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a, perfect landing spot as far as that's concerned in the Big 12 tournament every year being there. And so I wanted to, speaking of the Big 12 tournament, there's been tons and tons and tons of phenomenal matchups or games or upsets or incredible runs in that tournament. I want to talk about some specific Big 12 memories that maybe you've got, that maybe you've written about or covered, that you really, just appreciated the event of happening. And, for me, like I said, I'm a huge Giddy fan of the Big 12. Growing up in Oklahoma, we didn't have professional teams, so it was college sports and a lot of football for me. So I'm just going to throw a random one out there. Jaworski Lane, when he was playing for Texas A&M, I really appreciated him being a big-bodied running back, and that's how I kind of became a little bit more familiar with, like Jerome Bettis and some of the bigger guys in the NFL at that time.
Oh, for sure. It's pretty crazy you mentioned that name. That's a real true throwback, especially when it comes to A&M. I actually got to meet Jaworski when I was a when I was a younger boy. Went to an A&M. I think it was a spring game or something like that years ago. But anyways, we had a connection with one of our coaches who had a connection with Coach Fran back in the day. And at that time, Coach Franchione was at A&M. So I actually got to meet him, and he was a very large human being. It was almost like I would call it a lineman running the football. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely – I feel like everybody has those players that they remember, and it may not necessarily be from their favorite team. Obviously, if you're maybe a Texas fan, you think about Colt McCoy or Vince Young, or if you're Oklahoma, you think about, guys previously like Baker, Kyler, maybe a Jason White, Adrian Peterson. So we all have those Big 12 players that are kind of nostalgic for everybody. Probably for me, I would probably say, Ndamukong Suh's up there, Vince Young,
yeah.
Obviously, Adrian Peterson, who I just mentioned. We've had some great quarterbacks at Oklahoma over the past couple of years, with Baker and Kyler winning the Heisman most recently. So there's been some very high-profile names that we've seen over the conference over the years. I'm probably missing some. Brandon Weeden, Justin Blackman, maybe one of the best receivers in college sports history. So there's plenty of names, especially on the offensive side of the football, and when it comes to the Big 12. And I think everybody, like I said, has their favorite players, but there's just really so many. I think it'd really be hard for me to pick just maybe one player out of that group.
Yeah, it'd be dang near impossible. So I'm not going to even attempt to task you with that. I know I wouldn't be able to do it myself. Good call on Ndamukong Suh. A lot of people forget, Nebraska, not too long ago they were in the Big 12. So, I grew up an Oklahoma State fan. Sounds like you're a Sooners fan, I believe. I love Bedlam. Bedlam's one of the most fun single-handed, just sporting events that I partake in viewership, on a yearly basis. Some of the players that you guys have had, I absolutely adore them. I know he didn't get a lot of love, but we forget what Trevor Knight did in 2016. And then prior to him, a lot of folks just really don't know who this guy is. And the only reason I do is because I lived in Oklahoma. But Rhett Bomar, I loved Rhett Bomar. He was short-lived, obviously, but he was exciting.
Yeah, I don't really remember much of the Rhett Bomar days, and I guess I should tell everybody that I don't really have, I guess you would say, a Big 12 team. I try to stay as unbiased as I can. I think maybe very few people that probably know me could probably tell my favorite Big 12 team. I try not to ever give it away if I can. But yeah, I mean, Rhett, that's now we're talking early 2000s, so it's really before the run of the SEC as I can think of. And I think the SEC reign started, if I want to say, in 2006
when Saban came back to Bama.
Yeah, and with Urban coming to Florida. So those were some of the better days. Obviously, Oklahoma had some great teams back then. The only problem is, if I remember correctly, was they ran smack dab in the middle of the USC years. I can remember that Orange Bowl game.
Well, it was 45 to some. Oh, it was a whopping.
It was definitely ugly, and it took a heroic performance by Vince Young to really knock that USC dynasty really to its knees, and they've really never recovered since then. But then again, Texas really hasn't recovered much since then either.
Right. Yeah. 2012, I believe it was 2011, maybe losing to Bama in that national title game, being their most recent appearance. But man, that Rose Bowl game, I remember watching that. I want to say I was in middle school, and it just kept going, and it kept coming down to each one of those last little plays, and then Vince Young scampers onto the right side towards the right pylon in the corner of the end zone for the the victory. So that was a very, very good, exciting game. And yeah, like you said, bringing the USC Trojan dynasty to its proverbial knees. So as far as players, historically speaking, there's an abundance of them in the Big 12, and there's been some really phenomenal teams as of late, specifically with OU, having some of those teams they put together. And, you touched on it because I kind of threw it out there. The fact of, the unbiasedness, the team colorless glasses, I think is how you put it in your Twitter bio. And that's another thing that is very, very awesome about Heartland and y'all, in my opinion, is the fact that you take this core, this group of teams that you're covering very specifically for your niche and your market. But each week and each year and each month, you're still remaining, even though you may become more excited about a team in the off season, or you might just really start falling in love for a team. You guys do a really good job at making sure to compartmentalize that, if that makes sense.
Well, for sure. I think we only have one guy on staff, and he'll tell you right up front that he is an Oklahoma State fan, and that's our very own Dave Beal out of Oklahoma. Yeah. So he does a great job of covering anything Oklahoma State for us. He's always in the know-how with anything that comes out of Stillwater. So he does a really great job for us. But yeah, I mean, all of us really try to kind of wear the same hat. And I think everybody talks about wearing different types of hats for different types of teams. But I think for me, I try to wear the same hat all the time. And I try to tell you how I think I feel, no matter necessarily the team or the player behind my explanation. So for instance, if I think Kansas is bad, I'm going to tell you straight up, Kansas is bad. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything for you. I'm just going to kind of tell you how I feel, and I'm going to try to be as honest with you as possible, whether it's through my writing or, if I tweet something. It's kind of just what I'm thinking at the moment. Obviously, you can be wrong with how you feel with things. I've certainly experienced that over the years, feeling one way or thinking this about a team, and then something completely different happens. But that's expected. You got to own up to your mistakes. But no, I try to just tell you how it is, and I think that's what people appreciate the most. Now, with that said, I have gotten called probably everything in the book from probably I think outside of Kansas, that's probably the only team I have not been called a homer for, are the Kansas Jayhawks. But for obvious reasons, because they haven't won much on the football field in a long, long time. Yeah,
Todd Reesing, guys, if that name rings a bell. Yeah, they have not done anything in a very long time, and like you said, yeah, Kansas is bad. Don't let anyone fool you, y'all. Just because Les Miles came there, that's a bad place to be right now to go play football. But there's been kind of like a change in the Big 12, and I think some more change is probably going to happen here in the next couple of years. Some coaches on their way out. One being Mike Gundy. I think Mike Gundy's only got a couple of years left on the Oklahoma State shelf life. Is this something that, within Heartland Sports that you guys throw around as far as, what coaches may or may not be in the landscape of the upcoming Big 12 conference, model, the picture?
Well, yeah, obviously coaching kind of comes and goes. We've seen quite a few coaching changes over the years, for better or for worse in that case. But Mike Gundy's been one of the few coaches that have been at Oklahoma State for a long time. He's been in the conference since we've been covering the conference, along with guys like, Gary Patterson, obviously, is one I can think of off the top of my head. Other than that, I think everybody's pretty much changed. Bill Snyder was in the conference for a very long time, but you mentioned Mike Gundy. I think there's a very mixed opinion on Gundy. And to me, it's kind of like that saying, is the grass greener on the other side? Because we know what Mike Gundy does. Over the last, 8 to 10 years, I think he's got a top 10 program in terms of winning percentage. Now, recruiting, obviously, it's not up to par with necessarily what it should be given the success they've had on the football field. And I think that's why it really upsets a lot of fans, because they feel like they should be competing more. And they're one of the few teams in the Big 12 over the last few years that have not competed or played in the conference title game. And I think that's been another, kind of blemish on Mike Gundy's resume there. So it really just depends how you feel. Are you willing to take a risk for maybe a higher profile coach or a coach that can maybe take you to the next level? Or are you satisfied of what the Cowboys are right now? Kind of that upper tier Big 12, but are you afraid that if Mike Gundy leaves, are you going to start sliding towards the bottom? So I think it comes to kind of a risk/reward kind of thing. And depending on what side of the fence you're on about that is probably how you feel about Mike Gundy. At this point, I'm a little bit more reserved about him. I feel like he should probably stay there for a couple more years until I think there's some things that's going to have to happen with them. Obviously, I can get into more detail about the Oklahoma State, their team specifically and their quarterback situation with Spencer Sanders. If they get better quarterback play this past season, there's no doubt in my mind they're playing for a Big 12 title. Now, whether they win a Big 12 title this past year, I'm not sure if they would have or not. But I think it really starts with the quarterback for him. And since Mason Rudolph left, they really haven't found that guy that's been that steady rock for them. And when they find that, I think they'll continue to get better. Obviously, Jim Knowles, their defensive coordinator there, has done a tremendous job of turning around things on the defensive side of the football. They've got that side of it figured out, but it's just the offense that needs some more tweaking. But like I said, the overall consensus on Gundy's kind of out there. You're either on one side of the fence or the other. I'm probably more in the middle of that conversation.
Yeah, this just plain model of consistency, I would say, for the Big 12. Obviously, we've had a lot of turnover within the conference. After the Baylor thing, Art Briles left. He had been at Baylor for a few good years. And then, obviously you mentioned Gary Patterson, Matt Brown being out of the conference for 5 years now, man. Bob Stoops suddenly retiring. That was, kind of crazy. But nonetheless, the coaching, like you said, it comes in and out. And the job that Knowles has done on the defensive side of that Oklahoma State team, you talked about it, but I just wanted to second it a little more. He's had some really good success, out with Duke, and then, he kind of brought that ACC style of linebacking play here to the Big 12. I think that's where the successes kind of come from in that system that he brought over. But, I like the coaching hire that Kansas State made here in the last offseason. Getting a, North Dakota State coach is a little exciting. Kind of a parallel move for the Big 12, atmosphere of who they are, kind of smaller, big schools. So I really like that fit with that coach. And, it's exciting. Do you mentioned the quarterback decision. Do you think that the quarterback for Oklahoma State's on the roster that they need, or are you using that as a reference to the inefficiencies or deficiencies of Mike Gundy as a recruiter?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's a deficiency of recruiting. I think Spencer was a very high 4-star coming in there out of Denton Ryan, if I remember correctly, a few years ago. He was redshirted behind Cornelius in, I think, the 18th season. Obviously, some fans wanted to see him, obviously, because that time I believe they were like 7-6 that year. So there could definitely be an argument made that maybe Sanders should have gotten his feet underneath him during that year, that kind of rebuilding bridge year. But, with Gundy, I think some of the quarterback issues kind of do fall on his hands because in the grand scheme of things, he really does have say and control over that offense. I think some of the things they did schematically didn't necessarily fit Spencer Sanders' game. Obviously, they were trying to run some 2 tight end sets with him, and that's really not what Spencer does well. I think what they did in that bowl game against Miami in the Cheez-It Bowl was kind of a bit more his forte, so to speak. They really kind of opened things up in the offense and kind of let Spencer control the tempo of that game. I think that was probably the most comfortable I've seen him since his first start back against Oregon State in the 2019 season. But I think it kind of does fall at the feet of Mike Gundy. I'm not going to say that's going to define Mike's career or anything like that, or going to be his downfall, because I think the trajectory for Spencer Sanders is still very high for me at this point. But obviously, we'll see what happens moving forward.
Yeah, there's a lot of exciting pieces around the Big 12 moving forward, be it, new faces within coaching staffs or incoming recruits. Obviously, we can talk about Spencer Rattler's second season coming up. But, I want to see who takes over in, Austin. The Kansas State quarterback situation this year was a little weird. I think Daggy has another year left in West Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. Texas Tech's, blend of 4.5 quarterbacks, it seemed like, that they cycled in this year. I love that Bowman kid. He has to stay healthy. He's a big-bodied guy with a strong arm, thinks he can take all the hits, and sometimes it hurts a lot more. So, but, well, as we wrap the show up here and head towards, the outer parts of the show here, Derek, I wanted to make sure that, I extend the platform back out to you to, plug away for Heartland and whatever else, it is you are working on. I know you're a busy guy. And, again, I told you I'd say it a couple of times, but thanks again so much for coming on for this, curation of content. It is an honor of mine. Like I said, I'm a big fan and intaker of, your content as well as Heartland. So thanks again, man. And let's hear some more about where we can find you for the listeners.
You can find me on Twitter at DerekDuke25. Obviously, writing everything for Heartland in terms of football. We have a great staff on hand. Obviously, we've mentioned Pete Mundo a few times, the owner and operator. If you're a Big 12 basketball fan, I highly recommend you follow Matthew Postins. That's at Postins Postcard. I would dare you to find anybody better on the planet that does Big 12 basketball coverage than him. He is, eat, breathe, and sleep Big 12 basketball. He does a great job for us. He's even been, I think the last few years, they've been up to Kansas City for the Big 12 tournament. We'll see what happens this year with the Big 12 tournament, if we have one. But he was at the last one, I believe, that got called for COVID. And that was kind of really the last time we really saw Big 12 sports for the year until we got the football season. But just wanted to plug him as well. He does a great job for us. I just mentioned, obviously, Heartland College Sports. Your go-to for all things Big 12 in terms of football, basketball, baseball. We try to do what we can to cover it all. And like I said, we greatly appreciate any readers or listeners we have. We've seen quite a growth spurt over the years, and we want to continue to build that and grow that. Obviously, the more we can grow that, the more kind of content and coverage we can have for you guys. So it is truly greatly appreciated whenever we get feedback. And most of the feedback we get is always great. So that's always a plus. So we do thank everybody. And man, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. And anytime you need anything, just give me a holler, man.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate that. And yeah, like I said, big fan of y'all's, and I can concur to the rest of the staff that you referenced to that Big 12 basketball content. Oh man, like you said, second to none. And then y'all are a growing family. We're a growing family here. So make sure that you leave the criticisms and stuff the way you need to. And like you said, y'all are getting feedbacks. And what we like to do here and say on the show is, if you're going to leave a 1-star review, you better tell us why. We make sure to turn the heat right back on them, and in all good fun though. But again, it was Derek Duke from Heartland College Sports joining me today on the show. Huge favor cashed in today, and I appreciate it. And at Derek Duke 25, and that's DEREK. Duke 25 on Twitter. That's where you'll be able to find him. And then, of course, you'll find me at DALE007 on Twitter, at Hoopball Gaming, is where you'll find the show and everything as well. Go over to hoop-ball.com, check that premium stuff out. Make sure to get your analysis and such for all your needs, gambling, DFS, fantasy basketball. And then, keep tuned. We'll be back very shortly with more guests, more great content, more analysts, more breakdowns, more ways to win money. So don't forget those promo codes, and don't forget to be safe. I'm sending you all of my good vibes and all of my good energies, and we're going to roll on out of here. All right. Again, thank you, Derek. I appreciate you, bud.
Thanks for having me on.
Take care, everyone.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.
"15 minutes could save you 15% or more."
Is that Shakespeare?
Nope, it's Geico.
Yeah, that's Shakespeare from one of his unpublished works. Oh, it be not for awakening. Nay, giveth thou the berries. For 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Nope, it's from Geico, because they help save people money.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but Geico got it from Shakespeare.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.